Hi, I'm Donovan. They erased my name from the gates of the home I built, then forced me to scrub the floors like I was nothing. My own mother threw a dirty rag in my face. My sister sneered, "Clean the kitchen, you useless thing." I kept my head down, stayed quiet, until my husband walked in, and suddenly, the entire room stopped breathing. But here's the question. When the people who raised you treat you like a servant, how do you take back your name without ever raising your voice? Before we dive in, tell me, where are you listening from tonight? And have you ever been betrayed by your own blood? The email came through at 3:12 p.m. on a Wednesday, buried beneath a stack of legal memos and travel confirmations. My assistant, Marla, had flagged it with a bright red label, Urgent, Event Approval Request. I clicked, expecting another formality for one of the non-profits I quietly supported. Instead, my eyes scanned the message twice, then a third time. Dear Mr. Blackwood, we are pleased to confirm our catering and staging services for the Cassidy Family Gala scheduled for Saturday, 2 weeks from today. As previously arranged, we would like to access the grounds via the side garden entrance and begin setup by 9 a.m. Please confirm site access. We've attached the menu proposal and design mock-ups for review. It wasn't the wording that stopped me cold. It was the address listed right underneath. My address. My home. I stared at the screen for a long moment, letting the words sink into the space just beneath my ribs. Cassidy. Of course. I scrolled to the top again. No mention of me. No CC. No Donovan. Is this okay with you? Just assumption. Like I didn't exist, so they don't think I live here anymore. I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled beneath my chin. The quiet hum of the afternoon buzzed outside the windows of my study. Birdsong, a gardener's leaf blower 2 properties down, the distant crack of tennis balls on the private court next door. All of it as calm and ordered as the rest of my life. Except this. They were planning a gala in my home. A gala that bore my sister's name and my mother's fingerprints, and I wasn't invited. I opened the attachment. Linen sketches, champagne tower placements, a valet diagram. They'd gone all out. It was elegant, overdone, as always. Cassidy never missed a chance to show off. And Lorraine, well, she only showed up when there were photographers. I clicked through the images slowly, waiting for something, anything to change. Some hint that this was a mistake. But it wasn't. They knew exactly where they were hosting it. They just didn't care that it was mine. A soft knock at the door pulled me back. Marla peeked in, brows raised. You want me to respond? No, I said, standing. Not yet. She hesitated, sensing the shift in my tone, but she was too professional to ask. Understood. Once she left, I sat back down and stared at the event name again. Cassidy Family Gala. Family. 3 years ago, I stopped being that. The memory came back with a sting, one of those arguments that leaves no raised voices, just clean cuts. I had been at Cassidy's townhouse. She'd wanted $500,000 for her new skincare line, said it was an investment in the Blackwood legacy. When I declined, she laughed. Figures. You marry rich, then get stingy. And Lorraine, with her usual chilly smile, had added, Let's be honest, sweetheart. You were just lucky with money. You're not really one of us. That was the last time I saw them. No more holidays. No calls. Just a steady silence that hardened into routine. Until now. I closed the laptop and walked to the window, watching the light fade across the slope of the backyard where they'd planned to set up that glittering circus. The old version of me would have confronted them, demanded answers, but I wasn't interested in being pulled into their drama, not directly. Instead, I needed to know something else. How do they speak about me when I'm not in the room? Who are they when they think no one is watching? That night I made a call. Hey, Rick, I need someone placed on a private event staff list. Name's Carter Reeves, back kitchen, quiet job, no spotlight. Can you make that happen? Rick chuckled. You? Running plates? I just need to be there. Not seen. You got it, boss. Want the whole crew briefed? Yes. They answer to me only, and no one mentions my name. Not once. I spent the next few days setting things in motion, approving the fake resume, adjusting security protocols, pulling cameras offline in the key areas I knew they'd use. I didn't want recordings. I wanted raw interaction, eyes, words, truth, unfiltered. By the 7th day, the uniforms arrived. Plain black apron, white button-down shirt, name tag, Carter. I shaved, cropped my hair shorter than usual, and muted every detail of the man they knew. I watched from the library window as deliveries began to trickle in. Tables, drapes, lights, and not once did anyone knock on my office door. This wasn't a slip-up. It was an erasure. That Friday evening, as the sun dipped behind the cypress trees and shadows stretched across the stone walkway, I pulled the apron over my head and tied it tight. I looked into the mirror, not Donovan Blackwood, just the help, and I whispered to myself, like a challenge. Let's see who they are, when they think I'm no one. The moment my apron was tied, I stepped out through the kitchen corridor. No longer Donovan Blackwood, just another quiet shadow among the staff. A line of white-shirted caterers gathered by the side entrance, last-minute instructions being doled out by a harried head server named Ellis, a man who cared more about napkin folds than human names. "Stick to your zones, no wandering, no opinions," he snapped. "And no one speaks unless spoken to. Got it?" Everyone nodded. I did too. The rear gate opened, and we stepped into the manicured backyard, the same yard I'd once played tag in as a boy, chased by Cassidy with a fistful of water balloons. Tonight, it was a different battlefield. Tables glowed under strings of warm white lights. Champagne flutes caught the last amber glint of sunset. A jazz quartet tuned up beneath the pergola, the exact spot where I'd once asked my ex-wife to marry me. I tightened my grip on the tray of hors d'oeuvres and kept walking. Guests were already gathering. I spotted familiar faces, people I'd once hosted at board meetings, sat beside at charity galas. A few even used to call me Dawn. Now, they didn't even glance my way. One man adjusted his cufflinks and brushed past me with a mutter, "Watch it." So far, no one had recognized me. The uniform worked. The lowered gaze helped. But it was more than that. People saw what they expected to see, and no one expects the host to be the help. I began weaving through clusters of guests, offering canapes and small smiles. From the far edge of the pool deck, I spotted my sister, Cassidy, radiant in a sequined silver gown, holding court like she was born for it. My mother, Lorraine, hovered beside her in a tailored white dress far too bridal for a woman her age. They laughed with their heads tilted just so, teeth flawless, voices just loud enough to draw attention. A photographer snapped photos as they raised their glasses. I watched them pose on my patio. Cassidy's laugh rang out, sharp, performative. "This house has the best acoustics," she told a cluster of men, lifting her champagne. "It just sings with success." One of them, Paul Hunter, an investor I once mentored, leaned in and said, "You must love living here." Cassidy didn't even blink. "It's perfect. I designed every inch." I nearly dropped the tray. I turned away, jaw locked. She was rewriting history in real time, and no one challenged it. Over the next hour, I moved from one room to the next like a ghost in pressed cotton. The study, the library, even the wine cellar, each one filled with voices that didn't remember me. I stood behind buffet tables while former associates complimented Cassidy on her business acumen and told Lorraine she'd raised a dynasty. Not once did my name come up. Then came the moment that caught me off guard. Near the bar, Cassidy snapped her fingers at me. "Hey, you, kitchen boy, this tray is embarrassing." "Do you even know what presentation means?" I froze. She was 5 feet away, but her voice carried across the marble floors like a slap. I looked at the tray. A single olive had rolled out of alignment. That was it. I gave a small nod and stepped forward to adjust it. "Don't stand there gawking like a stray mutt. Lorraine added, her voice as cold as the martini in her hand. At least pretend you've had training. I lowered my gaze and swallowed. Sorry, ma'am, I said quietly. They turned away as if I were nothing. A whisper of something sharp rose in my chest, but I buried it. Not here. Not yet. I slipped back into the kitchen, where steam rolled off warming trays and staff bustled like clockwork. Maria, an older dishwasher with kind eyes and arms flecked with burn scars, paused beside me as I set the tray down. You're too smart for this job, kid, she said, eyeing me sideways. I gave her a half smile. Just paying my dues tonight. She didn't ask anything more. She just nodded, then returned to her sink full of soapy dishes. Her silence felt like the first act of mercy I'd experienced all night. People like them, she murmured as she scrubbed, always forget who they step on. I didn't answer, but her words stuck to me like heat off the grill. A few minutes later, I stepped back out into the main room, now reset for speeches. The crowd hushed as Cassidy stood on the small platform set up near the piano. She cleared her throat dramatically, tapping her glass with a fork. I just want to thank everyone for celebrating this incredible milestone with us. Tonight isn't just a party. It's a celebration of legacy, of vision, of family. I felt that word, family, like a cut behind my ribs. Lorraine dabbed her eyes with a cloth napkin, and the guests applauded. I turned toward the side counter, needing distance. That's when it happened. A damp cleaning rag, smelling faintly of bleach, hit my chest with a soft thud. Cassidy stood there, sneering. What are you standing there for? This counter's a mess. I looked down. The rag had left a wet blotch across my shirt. My fingers curled around it. Behind her, Lorraine rolled her eyes. Useless thing, she muttered to no one in particular. Laughter bubbled from a nearby group, and then I caught a flicker of something. Rowan, my cousin, he was across the room, holding a drink. He looked at me. Really looked. His brow furrowed. Recognition danced on the edge of his expression, but then he laughed too, turned his back. That moment, his glance, the rag, my sister's smirk, settled something deep inside me. I picked up the rag, walked to the sink, and looked into the mirror. What I saw there wasn't a servant. It was a storm waiting to rise. I turned on the tap, rinsed the rag clean, then killed the water and stared at the sink's basin, my chest tight, pulse like a quiet drum behind my ribs. Voices drifted in from the main hall. Cassidy's laugh, high and bright, followed by the tinkle of someone's glass against another. The gala was still in full swing, still theirs, still built on my name, my labor, my life. I wiped my hands, smoothed down my shirt, and stepped back out through the service door. The dessert table had been reset. Gold-trimmed platters of macarons, chocolate-covered strawberries, and tiny creme brulees glistened under glass covers. Just beside the last tiered tray, someone had set down a pile of glossy programs, souvenirs for the evening. I hadn't noticed them earlier. I picked one up, pretending to adjust the folded napkins beside it. On the cover, Celebrating Women of Legacy. Beneath that, in script font, Lorraine Cassidy Blackwood, the architects of a new era. I opened the first page. The introduction hit like a body blow. After the untimely death of patriarch Charles Blackwood, Lorraine and her daughter Cassidy rose from the ashes of tragedy to create the Blackwood Foundation Mansion, a space designed by vision, funded by grace, and built by 2 generations of strong women. I blinked. Once, twice. It kept going. From architectural concept to construction, the women of the Blackwood family steered every detail, ensuring legacy was not inherited, but built brick by brick. There was no mention of me, not even a footnote. I flipped ahead. A quote attributed to Cassidy. We didn't wait for someone to save us. We became the architects of our own future. That wasn't her quote. That was mine. page after page, renderings of rooms I had drawn by hand, layout ideas I had fought for, even the wine cellar I'd funded with my own bonus from a market flip in 2018. All credited to the women of the house. It was like walking through a crime scene, only the chalk outline was me. And then, one final paragraph. Though Donovan Blackwood passed on in spirit years ago, his absence allowed new roots to take hold. This house stands as proof that legacy is not defined by blood, but by resilience. I froze. My fingers gripped the edge of the booklet so tightly the paper creased under my thumb. Passed on in spirit? What does that even mean? Dead? Disowned? Erased? I was still standing right there. I looked up. Across the room, Lorraine stood near the entry to the library, her hand gently resting on a donor's forearm. She was laughing, regal, relaxed, not a hint of strain on her face. A woman nearby leaned in and said, "I had no idea your daughter was such a powerhouse." "And this home? Absolutely divine. You two built this yourselves?" Lorraine gave a soft nod, like she was too humble to brag but would allow the praise. "Yes, just us girls. It's been a journey." The guest smiled back, eyes wide with admiration. "It's incredible. You must be proud." She held her wine like a trophy. "I am. Cassidy is everything I hoped she'd be." I stood no more than 10 feet away, tray in hand. Not a glance, not even a flinch of acknowledgement. Someone tapped a glass nearby. I turned and caught a snippet of Cassidy's fiancé, Felix, talking to a group of investors. "Cassidy managed the construction budget like a seasoned CEO, every penny accounted for. I told her she should teach a course." They chuckled. And right beside them, Jeff Lantham, my old financial advisor. We used to strategize on my porch with printouts and bourbon. He was standing there now, nodding as if none of it rang false. As if he hadn't watched me sketch those same floor plans over poker and peanuts. He caught my eye and looked away, not with shame, with indifference. My throat burned, not from tears, just heat, like something inside me was boiling, slow, careful. I turned away, stepping through the side hallway that connected to the back foyer. The walls were lined with black and white portraits. My father's military commendations, a photo of him breaking ground on the first family vineyard. My photo, which once hung near the study door, was gone. In its place, a framed architectural sketch labeled Cassidy's Vision, 2020. I felt the shift in my body. Not rage, not panic, resolve. I moved through the hall and down the small staircase into the cooled wine cellar. Guests weren't allowed down here tonight, too risky with expensive labels on open racks. In the far corner, behind a tall cabinet, I reached for a recessed panel on the brick wall. A quiet hiss of hydraulics clicked as the drawer slid open. Inside, a thumbprint scanner. I pressed my finger. The glass display blinked green. The compartment opened. Still here. My personal cache, archived USBs, a backup tablet, and a recording device with weeks of audio stored from the hidden mics I'd installed 2 years ago. Originally, I'd put them in for security. Cassidy said I was paranoid. Lorraine had waved me off with a sigh. Now I was glad I hadn't listened. I clicked the device on and scrolled through the file names. June 12th, kitchen planning meeting. June 14th, backyard design brief. June 17, Lorraine and Cassidy, wine room conversation. I copied everything onto a separate drive, slid the device back, shut the panel. If they wanted to play erasure, I'd play preservation. They'd taken my name off the plaque, but I still had receipts. Not just paper, but truth. Voice. Proof of who had done the work. Of what had really been said in the weeks leading up to this gala. I made my way back upstairs, rejoining the hallway. And then, as I turned toward the kitchen, I saw him. Rowan. My cousin. Lorraine's nephew through her younger sister. He was leaning against the wall, sipping his drink, just outside the guest bathroom. His eyes met mine. This time, he didn't look away. He tilted his head. "You look kinda familiar." My heart kicked once in my chest, but I didn't stop walking. "Must be the uniform," I said softly, not breaking stride. He narrowed his eyes. "No, I swear I know you." But I was already past him, into the kitchen. The heat, the bustle, the noise, all a mask I could hide behind. Back at the dish rack, Maria was scrubbing a pan. She glanced up. "You good?" I gave her a nod. Then I looked down at my hands, still clutching the downloaded drive, and I knew. If they could erase a man like me from his own home, maybe it was time the world remembered exactly who built it. I didn't need to slam the door behind me. Just the act of walking out, deliberate, calm, sent a sharper message than any outburst could have. My shoes echoed against the marble as I left the ballroom behind, tracing the back corridors I once knew by heart. The air back here was cooler, still carrying that faint scent of cedarwood polish and aged paper. I passed the paneled wall I'd once designed myself, every groove aligned to perfection. Nobody ever noticed details like that. But I had. This wing had been mine, not just in name, but in soul. Every tile, every screw, I'd chosen them. A familiar door stood at the end, dark mahogany, no placard anymore, just a brass handle that used to bear my fingerprint lock. I pushed it open, expecting resistance, but it yielded easily. What hit me wasn't the cold, but the silence. Gone were the shelves of blueprints, the antique globe I'd found in Florence, the signed photo from a mayoral campaign I'd quietly funded, replaced. Every inch of the room, redone. Now it was soft beige and gold, velvet armchairs, crystal vases, floral arrangements that screamed overdone. A plaque sat on the far wall. The Legacy Lounge, for Lorraine Cassidy. My chest didn't tighten. It hollowed. There were photos framed on the wall, but not of my accomplishments. No, these were all Cassidy, posing beside models of buildings she never designed. Grinning with coastal landmarks in the background. One caption read, "Youngest female architect to restore an East Shore relic." The relic was mine. The home was mine. Even my father's last letter, once framed above the fireplace, gone. I stepped toward the old desk, fingers brushing against the polished edge. They'd kept the furniture, not because of respect, because it looked classic, a showpiece. I ran my palm across the surface until I found it, a faint indentation, hidden by the lacquer. A dent left the day I closed escrow on this estate. I'd slammed my fist there, laughing like a fool. First-generation wealth. First home I'd bought without cosigners. Back then, the world felt possible. I sank into the chair and pulled open the side drawer. Most were empty, except one. An envelope, yellowing at the edges. Inside, a card. No glitter, no typed message, just black ink, slightly faded. To my son. I'm proud of the man you've become. Dad. I let the card rest in my hand. Didn't move. Didn't speak. I could almost hear his voice again. Deep, steady. The kind that didn't need to raise in pitch to demand respect. "You wouldn't have let this happen, Dad," I whispered. Not as anger, just truth. "You sure as hell wouldn't have let them rename my home like a damn resort." The room stayed silent. Too still. I almost didn't notice the shift in light behind me. "Figured you looked familiar," came a voice. I didn't turn. Just closed the drawer again, slow. "Don't say anything." "I won't," the voice said. "Your secret's safe with me." I turned. Maria, the older dishwasher, same one who'd whispered to me earlier in the kitchen. She stood in the doorway like she'd just stepped out of the shadows, hands folded neatly in front of her apron, no judgment, just a quiet steadiness in her eyes. "You deserve better than this," she said. "I've worked here for 12 years. They told us never to open this door, said it was reserved for royalty only." She chuckled softly. Didn't realize they meant the kind who erases their own. I let out a bitter breath. How long have they been staging all this? She shrugged. Long enough for Cassidy to act like she owns the bones of this place. Lorraine doesn't call it Blackwood Manor anymore. Just the Cassidy estate. I winced. Maria stepped forward, reaching into her pocket. They're counting on people forgetting, but not everyone has. She handed me something. A key card. The old kind. Black stripe on the back. From the security system I'd installed myself. This still works on the staff corridor doors, she said. They never bothered to reset the old backups. I stared at the card, then back at her. She nodded once. Some of us remember, Mr. Blackwood. We know who really built this place. And just like that, she was gone. Quiet as she came. I stood there for a while longer, not thinking, just breathing. Then I moved. Past the desk, toward the side wall. There, hidden beneath a decorative panel, was the access point. I pressed a seam. A low click. The wood slid back to reveal a small digital panel. Dusty, but still glowing faintly blue. I placed my palm over the screen and whispered, "Legacy never forgets." The interface lit up. My old dashboard, camera feeds, contract logs, staff rotations. They hadn't even known this system existed. I scrolled through pages of data, faces, timestamps. They wanted my name stripped from every document. My presence erased from every room, but they forgot one thing. The house doesn't forget. Not the walls, not the locks, not the quiet eyes still loyal in the shadows. I leaned in, voice steady now. Record. The system responded with a soft tone. The room didn't feel stolen anymore. It felt like a beginning. By morning, they'll either remember who owns this place or wish they never set foot in it. By the time sunlight poured across the stone courtyard, the front lawn was buzzing with noise, camera gear rolling over flagstone, lighting umbrellas stretching like mechanical flowers, and an over-enthusiastic PR assistant shouting into her headset about wardrobe delays. I watched from a second-floor window, coffee in hand, dressed once again in muted staff khakis and the same name tag I'd been given yesterday, Jeremy. They wanted a spotlight. I just lit a fuse beneath it. Downstairs, Lorraine was already in full hostess mode, fluttering around the camera crew in a cream pantsuit, hands slicing through the air as she described historic restoration and feminine vision. Cassidy stood a few feet away, sipping green juice and adjusting her perfectly tailored wrap dress, ready for her close-up, like this was a Vogue shoot and not a stolen legacy. I waited until the stylist started fluffing a throw pillow for the outdoor bench setup before making my entrance. "Hey," a production assistant called, waving me over. "You're helping stage props, right?" I nodded, slipping into character. "Where do you want the bench?" Cassidy pointed without looking at me. "By the stairs. And hurry, no staff in the background. It ruins the illusion." Illusion, huh? I lifted the bench slowly, deliberately angling it beneath the eastern archway. The old marble beneath it had just enough reflective gloss, not too obvious. But if you knew what to look for, you'd catch the faint shapes behind the camera. People. Movements. Maybe even me. Just the edge of a shoulder, the back of my neck. Enough for questions. As the team fussed over lenses and lighting diffusers, I walked past a full-length brass planter and casually tilted it half an inch. Its polished base now angled directly at where Cassidy would stand during the main shoot, a mirror within a mirror, just enough exposure. The photographer, a young guy in his 30s with gelled hair and high-energy optimism, clapped once. "All right, let's get our two ladies of legacy center frame. Lorraine, Cassidy, big smiles." Cassidy sauntered up the staircase, stopping halfway up to pose with one hand on the banister. "Should I look toward the trees or the house?" "Toward the house, definitely," the assistant called back. "We want it to feel personal, grounded." grounded in someone else's blood, sweat, and blueprints. As they adjusted her position, Lorraine stepped in closer, draping a shawl over Cassidy's shoulders. "It's your story, sweetheart. Let them see the brilliance." Cassidy smiled at her, the kind of sugary grin that's meant for cameras, not people. I moved behind the camera crew, adjusting a light stand per request. Nobody noticed I flicked the switch twice, power cycling it just enough to glitch the light sensor. The backup battery would record the flicker in the raw metadata, a small detail. But in editing, it'd be hard to scrub if you knew what you were looking for. Halfway through the session, the photographer gushed, "This mansion is incredible. Honestly, Cassidy, what you've done with it? It's transformative." Cassidy tilted her head. "I believe architecture should always tell a story. This one? It's about reclaiming forgotten beauty." Funny, I thought, because I sure remembered everything. He asked her to pose with a rolled-up blueprint in hand, to symbolize vision. She reached into a basket of props they'd brought, pulling out a replica of the estate's architectural plans. Except it wasn't a replica. Not entirely. They'd pulled the original from my old archives, probably without realizing the watermark was still faintly embedded in the corner. Blackwood Holdings. D. Blackwood. Principal architect. I felt the corners of my mouth twitch, but kept my head down. Didn't say a word. I moved closer, adjusting a potted plant beside the set. Cassidy glanced at me, waving vaguely. "You, make sure the background's clean. We don't want clutter in these shots." "Of course," I said. Then, louder, for the mic I'd hidden in my collar, "They want the public to see a fantasy. I'll make sure they remember reality." The shoot wrapped around midday, and the team moved inside for editorial interviews. Lorraine's voice echoed through the hall as she spoke about lineage and legacy, never once mentioning the name etched in the original deed, the name they'd tried to erase. I was loading unused gear into the back storage closet when someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned. Rowan. He looked cautious this time, not smug, not arrogant, just curious. "Okay, this is gonna sound nuts," he said under his breath. "But did you used to work in finance?" I blinked. "Why?" "I swear I've seen your photo before. Not here, like years ago. You were on the board of some real estate fund." "Black something." I tilted my head, gave him a half smile. "I used to build things." Then I turned away. Rowan didn't follow, but I felt the shift, that itch of suspicion. It had rooted now. By late afternoon, the lawn had been cleared, the crew packed up, and the mansion fell back into its quiet theater of rehearsed civility. Lorraine had gone to change for dinner. Cassidy was in her study reviewing shots with the PR girl. The place felt glossy, hollow. I made my way to the private corridor behind the kitchen, where the old server station still had weak Wi-Fi access. I opened my phone, new SIM, anonymous login, and uploaded a still frame from the shoot. Not a full photo, just a clipped corner. Cassidy, smiling broadly, holding the architectural plans with her name in bold beneath the title, Visionary Renovator. But there, barely visible in the bottom corner, was that watermark. Blackwood Holdings, D. Blackwood, Principal Architect. I posted it to a niche real estate forum with one line, "Who really built the mansion featured in this month's Coastal Estates cover?" I watched the page refresh. 10 views, 37. Comments started rolling in beneath the post. "That watermark looks real." "Wait, isn't Blackwood Holdings that firm that shut down after a hostile family buyout?" This could get interesting. By dinner, I knew the fire had been lit. They wanted fame, recognition, the spotlight. I didn't have to fight them for it. All I had to do was expose the wires underneath the stage. The morning after the photo shoot aired, I didn't even have to touch my phone to know something had shifted. I felt it in the air, like a slow-moving current changing direction, subtle but undeniable. By the time I walked past the kitchen into the hallway, where the Wi-Fi held strongest, the mansion's silence was already buzzing with static energy. I slipped into the utility room near the back pantry, my unofficial office, and opened the old laptop I'd hidden behind the stacked linens. The Coastal Estates feature had gone live just after midnight. 12 hours later, it was no longer just a glossy tribute, it had become a battlefield. The first ripple came from a TikTok post by a creator known for breaking down architectural frauds and flops. The video opened with a freeze frame of Cassidy smiling beneath the arched staircase, then cut to the same shot, this time zoomed in on the lower right corner. There it was. "Who is Dee?" "Blackwood?" the voiceover asked, half intrigued, half accusatory. "Why is this name watermarked on the original draft, but never mentioned once in the article? Coastal Estates got some explaining to do." I refreshed the comments. "Wait, Cassidy didn't design that? That watermark looks real. Did they fake the ownership history too? This is giving Stolen Legacy vibes." I didn't smile, but I did sit back for a second and let my shoulders drop. Let them chase the trail. Let them question everything. A knock on the laundry door broke the moment. It was Rowan. He had his phone in one hand, the other buried deep in his hoodie pocket. His voice was lower than usual. "You seen this mess online?" I nodded. People love a scandal. He leaned against the doorframe, chewing the inside of his cheek. "Cassidy's flipping out. She called the publisher twice. Blamed the interns." That tracked. Blame the little people. That was always Lorraine's move, too. I stood, adjusting the mop bucket just to look busy. She should probably be careful where she points fingers. Rowan didn't move. He just studied me for a moment too long. "Thing is, I don't think you're just some guy pushing carts around." My eyes flicked to him, but I said nothing. He pulled something from his back pocket, small, silver, about the size of a car key. "I made a backup of Cassidy's hard drive before she wiped it. There's a folder labeled Draft Concepts, DB. Like, dozens of them, all dated before she even claimed the house." He extended the USB toward me. His hand didn't shake. I took it slowly. "Why are you giving this to me?" He shrugged, looked at the floor. "Because I don't think you're the bad guy here, and because I hate when people get away with stealing someone else's work." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Thank you." It was the first time I'd said those words out loud since I returned. He left without another word. And I didn't waste time. By noon, Lorraine had called a house-wide meeting in the drawing room. Her pearl earrings flashed under the chandelier light as she surveyed us like a disappointed principal. "There's some misinformation circulating," she began, voice tight but rehearsed. "I want to be absolutely clear. Anyone caught leaking images, drafts, or documents from this property will be prosecuted." She paused dramatically, gaze scanning the group. When her eyes landed on me, I didn't flinch. Instead, I raised my hand. "What if someone was falsely credited?" I asked. The silence in the room went stiff. Lorraine's nostrils flared, and I caught Cassidy shifting uncomfortably behind her. "I beg your pardon?" Lorraine said flatly. I looked her in the eye. "Just a question." A younger girl from kitchen staff piped up from the back. "Honestly, most of this house doesn't even feel like Cassidy's taste. She's more into faux French stuff." "This place has bones." A few others murmured in agreement. Lorraine dismissed us moments later with a clipped, "Back to work." But the damage was done. That night, after the halls went quiet and the second-floor lights dimmed, I returned to the linen room and plugged Rowan's drive into the old laptop. Everything was there. Blueprints, renderings, timelines, even voice notes from my original planning files that must have synced to a cloud they thought they'd scrubbed. I assembled them carefully, chronologically, clearly, with all the ownership transfers filed behind it. At 2:13 a.m., I wrote a short letter to the editorial team at Coastal Estates. Then I copied it to a real estate investigative blog, a preservationist watchdog group, and one city council ethics office I knew still had my name buried in its archives. In one final upload, I attached everything. Then I clicked send. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about correction. They wanted to be legends. I gave them a legacy with footnotes. 2 weeks later, the echoes of that footnote were still reverberating through more than just online comment threads. They'd made their way into boardrooms, leaked investor memos, whispered phone calls between people who once left my name off their lips like it was a curse. This morning, Cassidy stood near the grand piano, giving instructions to the caterers, the photographers, the security team, the stylists, all of them. It was her press preview day. The gala she'd been orchestrating for months was finally here. Or at least, that's what it was supposed to be. I walked past the marbled foyer with a tray of champagne glasses balanced on my left hand. Not a single guest paid attention. Good. Except one. Rowan stood by the west staircase, arms folded, eyes narrowed. She didn't blink as I passed. I made it to the back hallway before she caught up. "You're not just the guy who refills the ice bucket," she said quietly. I turned around, still holding the tray. "No?" She didn't smile. "You're Donovan Blackwood, the real Donovan, aren't you?" The hallway was silent except for the soft shuffle of high heels from the main parlor. I nodded once. She stared at me like she was recalibrating everything. "You're the founder, the environmental trust, the investment group that started this entire development. All that was you." "Yes." Her voice dropped. "So why are you just standing here? Why let them tell the story?" I set the tray down on a nearby console, careful not to clink the glasses. "Because they already signed their names onto lies," I said. "All I had to do was wait." She didn't respond at first. Then, in a tone that almost cracked, "I used to think you were just quiet. Now I think you're the most dangerous man in the house." I gave her a small smile. "That's not always a bad thing." Cassidy's voice rang out down the hall, calling for staff to assemble near the garden entrance. I picked the tray back up. Rowan didn't stop me. By the time the gala preview began, the entire estate looked like a cover shoot. Lights shimmered off ice sculptures and mirrored tabletops. Journalists in muted designer coats hovered near the sculpture fountain, each with press lanyards and preloaded questions. Lorraine stood front and center, rehearsed and regal, ready to control the narrative. Cassidy beside her, sleek in black silk, didn't stop checking her phone, but the questions came quickly. "Could you clarify who first acquired the deed to the property?" one reporter asked, voice sharp. "Of course," Lorraine said, giving a tight smile. "It was our daughter Cassidy. She had the vision, the commitment, the network. But we've seen documents referencing a D. Blackwood," another cut in. "Original blueprints with that name. Are you familiar with it?" Cassidy's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her champagne. I was already beside her, offering the glass. Her eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. "You've been very helpful," she muttered, voice low. "I live to serve," I answered. She looked away. From across the room, a camera flash caught my eye. A reporter was reviewing photos from an old project exhibit. One in particular had been zoomed in, me, years ago, blurred but unmistakable, holding a rolled blueprint while Cassidy's teenage self smiled in the foreground. I moved through the room like smoke, present but never anchored. I watched, I listened, and when the sun dipped behind the hills and the preview ended, I returned to the utility room where the old laptop still sat beneath linen stacks. I plugged in Rowan's drive, loaded the final video, edited it one last time with stills and clips from Cassidy's own speeches, her origin story, her claims. Then I dropped in the real timestamps, development contracts, emails. Screenshots of Cassidy asking me to not be so loud about the planning stages, and then the final image, the staged family photo they used in Coastal Estates, everyone smiling, champagne in hand, except one figure, blurred in the background. Me, holding the blueprints. The caption I added, "Stolen Legacy, the real owner behind the mansion." I uploaded the video to a real estate expose channel known for going viral with investor fraud stories, then sent it to a few select journalists who'd asked about the inconsistencies. And I waited. Upstairs, I could already hear the pinging of notifications from Cassidy's phone. By midnight, Lorraine would be calling lawyers, but they'd already spoken too much. This time, I didn't say a word. I just let them hear themselves. They threw me out of my own home. Now I'm letting the world walk in, with cameras. 3 days after the expose hit 1 million views, I stood under the same portico where they once told me to mop up after the important guests. The same marble floor Lorraine once insisted I polish by hand because machines left streaks. And now, the only thing streaking was the comment section. I adjusted my collar, checked the lapel mic one last time, and nodded toward the crew setting up outside the gates. "You ready for this?" asked Ty, the host of The Property Sleuth, a fast-talking, sharp-eyed YouTuber who'd made his name uncovering dirty real estate deals and busted luxury flops. He wore black jeans, a blazer, and sneakers that cost more than the chandelier over Cassidy's grand staircase. "Let's walk them through the truth," I said simply. Rolling in 3, 2. "Today," Ty began, grinning into the camera, "we're standing in front of one of the most talked-about homes in California. The mansion at Creststone Grove, featured in headlines, lawsuits, and social media scandals, will finally be revealed from the inside." The stream went live at 10:03 a.m. By 10:08, over 500,000 people had tuned in. By 10:14, we crossed 1.2 million. The gates opened. We walked slowly, side by side, as Ty narrated for the viewers. This estate was built with environmental innovation, layered design, and allegedly, stolen credit. Our guide today is the man who knows it better than anyone else. The camera panned toward me. I smiled, just enough. "Hi, I'm Donovan Blackwood. Let me show you my house." And just like that, the internet lost its mind. We began in the foyer. I pointed to the custom arches, explaining how I'd designed them to reflect both Spanish Revival and mid-century harmony. Viewers in the chat were already typing, "Wait, he designed it? Why is he speaking like the architect?" We moved into the library. "That hidden door over there," I said, pausing as Ty pulled it open with mock surprise, "leads to a quiet work nook. I carved the initials DB in the corner beam before the first coat of stain went on. Still there." Ty leaned closer to the camera. "Yeah, I see it. This guy isn't making stuff up." I didn't have to. The house was my fingerprint. Every beam, every line of sight, every skylight positioned for morning light. I knew it better than they ever would. "Why'd you keep quiet this long?" Ty asked in a low voice between takes. "Because sometimes silence tells you who's willing to rewrite your story," I said. We entered the atrium. The stream lagged for a second, likely from the sheer number of comments flooding in, but picked up again as I described the imported tiles Cassidy had once claimed she'd selected from her personal vision board. Truth was, I spent a week in Oaxaca sourcing them myself. "Let's move upstairs," Ty said, clearly energized. Viewers want more. We reached the master suite, a vaulted ceiling marvel with floor-to-ceiling windows, glass shelves built into the framing, and a sound-dampened meditation cove. "She claimed this was designed for her wellness routine," Ty said, scrolling through past press clippings. "True? She didn't even know what that room was until after construction," I replied. "It was built as a sound sanctuary for my late sister who had sensory challenges." The chat exploded. One commenter said, They used a room meant for someone with special needs. As a content shoot? I kept my eyes on the camera. They took more than credit. They erased meaning. At that moment, as if on cue, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Cassidy burst into view. "What the hell is going on?" she snapped. She was in silk and pearls, but her face was blotched, voice raw. "You can't film in here. This is private property." Ty didn't even flinch. "The homeowner invited us." She spun toward him. "I am the homeowner." Ty looked at me. "Right?" I turned slowly. "Actually, that would be me." Cassidy froze. Not because she was confused, but because somewhere, deep down, she already knew. She just hadn't wanted to believe it. You signed it over years ago," she hissed. "No. I put it in a trust, one that reverts full ownership, legally and irrevocably, back to me upon breach of clause. Like, say, falsifying founding credit or misusing charitable grants." "You're bluffing." Ty held up a tablet, already pulling up the documents. "It's all here. We had it vetted before filming." The silence in the room was suffocating. Cassidy's voice shook. "You're doing this just to humiliate me." "No," I said calmly. "I'm doing this so the truth has a place to live, right here, under the roof I built." Downstairs, I could hear Lorraine yelling at someone over the phone. We didn't pause. We headed back to the main hall, Ty narrating while live chat hearts and shocked emojis danced up the screen like confetti. An hour later, Lorraine appeared at the top of the staircase with her usual poise, but a noticeable tremor in her step. "I want to make an official statement," she declared. Cameras turned. Ty nodded politely. I folded my hands and stepped aside. My daughter had no intention of deceiving anyone. There was a transition of ownership, yes, but it was a family matter, a misunderstanding. This, she waved at the filming, has gone too far. The audience wasn't buying it. Comments rolled in like fire. "Gaslighting 1001. Liar. Typical cover-up." I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. By nightfall, 2 sponsors dropped their partnership with the mansion's Gala Foundation. The Historic Society issued a statement disavowing its connection. Several staff members submitted public resignations, citing moral concerns. And the local paper's front page the next morning read, "Founding Heir Returns, Exposes Years of Deception at Gala Mansion." At 9:43 p.m., Lorraine tried to use her keycard to enter through the West Wing gate. It flashed red. She tried again, still red. Then she called me. I didn't answer. I gave them silence. They gave me war. But now, it's time to reclaim everything they thought I'd forgotten. The rain had stopped the night before. Now, sunlight angled through the trees like it had something to prove. Clean and quiet and blameless. I stepped out of the car as the courthouse doors swung open, the rustle of paper and echo of shoes on polished floors greeting me like the start of something final. Not a beginning, not an ending. Just the point where you stop pretending. The mediation hearing was held in one of those conference-style rooms tucked away in a side wing. Beige carpet, long rectangular table, pitchers of water no one ever drank. Across from me, Cassidy and Lorraine sat in stiff silence. A third attorney I didn't recognize leaned in to whisper something to Lorraine, and she nodded, her jaw tight. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. My attorney, Donna Chen, had everything laid out in front of her. A thick binder, a small laptop. Calm eyes that said she wasn't here to argue, just to end it. The panel began with formalities, reading out the property name, the disputed assets, the terms of ownership under trust law, and the cited violations. I watched Cassidy tap her nails against the table, pretending calm, but her shoulders betrayed her. Lorraine, on the other hand, had perfected stillness. Not peace, just stillness. a quiet freeze she'd used my whole life to silence dissent. Dana spoke for me. The trust never transferred full ownership, she began, voice measured. Our client retained legal control under Reversionary Clause 3B, triggered by public misrepresentation of origin, unlawful allocation of charitable funds under IRS Code 4941, and failure to disclose foundation founders per IRS Form 990. Cassidy flinched. Lorraine exhaled slowly, like she hadn't heard that one coming. Furthermore, Dana continued, we submit into evidence a notarized memo from the original family attorney, now deceased, confirming the estate and its title remain irrevocably linked to Mr. Donovan Blackwood. A short silence followed. Then the panel chair, a man with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses, looked up and asked, "Is there any counter-evidence being submitted today?" Lorraine's lawyer opened his mouth, but Cassidy cut him off. "I'd like to offer a settlement." Her voice cracked halfway through. "Full donation rights to the Gala Foundation, co-naming rights on the education wing, and a public apology, in exchange for retaining residency and shared legal name on the trust." Dana glanced at me. I looked straight ahead and said nothing. "No counter-evidence," Dana replied. "We decline all settlement terms." The panel conferred for 20 minutes. When they returned, the lead mediator cleared his throat and said plainly, "Effective immediately, all property rights, foundation credit, and public claims regarding the Creststone Grove estate, associated accounts, and derivative projects shall revert in full to Mr. Donovan Blackwood. Miss Lorraine Blackwood and Missin Cassidy Wren Blackwood shall vacate within 72 hours. He paused. "And Mr. Blackwood is within his rights to restore the original family name to any and all documents, entrances, and philanthropic records." I stood, smoothed my jacket, thanked the panel, walked out without looking back. Outside, a breeze caught the tail of my coat. A text from Rowan popped up. "Waiting by the car. She's already packing." When I returned to the estate that afternoon, the quiet hit different. No voices bouncing off high ceilings, no fake laughter echoing from a phone screen somewhere upstairs. Cassidy was in the front drive, shoving designer bags into a rented black SUV. She didn't look up. I didn't stop walking. But behind me I heard a voice. Rowan, leaning near the archway, soft but clear. "They took your name off the gates, but never from the foundation." I turned back slightly. "They never really owned anything," I said. "Not even their stories." By nightfall, the West Garden lights had come back on. For the first time in years, I walked it freely. No cameras, no scheduled tour, no fabricated captions. Just the sound of water flowing in the koi pond and the faint smell of jasmine coming into bloom. Rowan joined me with a soft laugh. "You remember when you used to call this the quiet quarter?" "Still is." She handed me a small wooden box. I opened it. Inside, folded carefully, was a letter in my father's handwriting, one I'd never seen. "Found," Rowan said, in an old book tucked behind a false shelf Cassidy never noticed. "You built more than a home. You built a legacy. One day you'll come back. When you do, make it yours again. They'll try to forget, but this place remembers." I sat down on the stone bench and let it sink in, not because I needed his validation, but because somewhere, beyond all the twisted stories and staged posts, he'd seen me, at least once. In the days that followed, the staff returned, one by one. First, Marcella from the greenhouse, then Leo from facilities. By the end of the week, half the original team was back. The gates were repaired, the West Wing reopened, and a donation was quietly announced, anonymous, but everyone knew. A community center in my father's name, with programming for kids like the ones we used to tutor. This time, no photos, no plaque, just results. On a calm Thursday evening, Rowan and I sat on the patio. She poured 2 glasses of ginger tea and leaned back, kicking off her shoes. "You did it," she said. I didn't answer. I just looked out at the sunset washing over the lawn, the wind gently moving through the trees, the stillness no longer cold. When they made me invisible, I rebuilt my name in silence. But now the gates bear it again.